Welcome to the DDT Archives Indy Lounge. This is Chris. With me, as always, is my partner in crime and co-host, Greg. Greg, how are you today?
Doing very, very well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I am so excited for tonight's episode. You know, we get to talk to one of my closest friends in the wrestling business. We've become fast friends. He is a friend of the program. He is the man of Manarchy, Jack Jameson. Jack, how you doing?
I am sitting here looking at my dog staring into the corner of my room, so I want to say I'm good, but I'm confused and conflicted at the moment.
That does not surprise me at all. Knowing you the way that I do, I get it.
My dog is interesting. I have a Chihuahua Fox Terrier, so he's tiny. And somehow, every night, kicks me off of my queen-size bed. And I don't know what it is about him, but it's at 2 in the morning when he's woken me up because he's kicking me off the side of the bed. Instead of being like, dude, move, and pushing him, I'm like, oh, well, if I move in just this angle, I won't wake him up.
It sounds like the struggles of every dog owner that makes a mistake of letting their dog sleep in their bed. I am guilty of this as well.
I should have never let him. I should have made him an outside dog and said, screw it.
My wife will wake me up to get out of bed to use the bathroom instead of waking up the dog, so I get it. I do.
Been there.
Apparently, I get less angry than the dog does. Who knew?
That's impressive.
I guess I work really hard at being nice to my wife.
Aww.
If you understand my struggles in dating like Craig does, you understand why I treat my wife well.
I'll tell you, quick story. I was the first one of Chris's friends to meet his now wife when they first started dating.
Sure.
And they were down the Jersey Shore, but my now wife and I went to see them, went out to dinner, spent the night, whatever. And I told him the next day, I'm like, just don't screw this up. That's the first thing I said to him. I was like, don't, stop now. Hang on to her like grim death, because you're not getting better than this.
Oh, you have? No, I've been there. It's just I'll be completely honest. I got out of a relationship of about 4.5, 5 years. But even before that, I've always been super commitment-phobic. So, one of my dearest friends in the business, Ricky, he wrestles as Ricky Mandel. I'll call him, and I'll be like, hey, I kind of like this girl. And he'll be like, well, talk to me in the morning, and let's see how you feel then. And then the next morning, I'm like, that's why I text him and not the girl, because then I'm like, I'm commitment-phobic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a little sad, but it's awesome.
Yeah. It is sad. But you know what? Thus is life.
That is true.
It is. And your wrestling story is one that I find fascinating. And I want to dive right into something that Greg and I haven't really tackled yet on the podcast, but it's something that you do quite often. Want to talk about intergender wrestling. And sometimes it feels like it's stigmatized, but you consider Angel Blue one of your greatest rivals. Talk to us about the misconceptions about intergender professional wrestling.
Well, the thing about intergender wrestling that everybody fails to realize is, listen, I've seen UFC fights where the women who are smaller will beat the bigger woman, or the guys that are smaller will beat the bigger guy. Height and weight has nothing to do with your ability to fight and compete. And at the end of the day, that's what a wrestling match is. Competition. It's being able to push the other one to their limit. And man, I'll be honest with you, I've been hit probably harder in wrestling by the women I've wrestled than any of the men I've wrestled. Hands down. But it also, you got to remember too, with wrestling, you're just telling a story. The point of a wrestling match is this. If I can entertain a fan who's never cared for wrestling, never wanted to be a wrestling fan, then I've done my job. So whatever colors you get, whether it's hardcore, whether it's intergender, whether it's, triple threat, trios, whatever, it's a story, and that's what needs to be told. And intergender wrestling, I think, is one of the funnest stories to tell.
And that's the thing. It's like, how many movies or TV shows or whatever do you watch where there's these badass women just hauling off and beating the crap out of whoever they're fighting? Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And so it's like, why wouldn't that translate well to the wrestling wing, where, like you said, it is telling a story? And all the thing I always have low expectations for my wrestling. I get excited for it, but I just want, make me feel something, make me laugh, make me wince, make me, jump out of my seat or sit at the edge of my seat, whatever. Just give me something, and I'm cool with it. It doesn't have to be a 5-star classic match. It's just make me feel something, and I never thought that was too much to ask of my wrestling. So how do you feel about that?
I'll tell you this. As I was growing up in the business, because I was that stereotypical guy that, there was no indie wrestling for me as a kid. There was no, I watched WWF, I watched WCW, and I had heard of ECW. So, when I first started getting into the business, the one match that rocked my world was Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi. Like, Kenta Kobashi and Samoa Joe became my favorite wrestlers that day. Among several others that have influenced me, but that match changed me. But, man, back on what you were saying a second ago, what I used to love doing, because I didn't know anybody in the indies, but I had heard that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla was this company that, I needed to watch and I needed to study. And between that and going to, like, Ring of Honor shows, I used to love looking at a match, like the so-and-so versus so-and-so, and being like, well, I don't know these people. Like, I don't know if it's going to be any good. And then it ends up blowing my mind.
And that's how I feel like since we started this, like the interview portion of our podcast, it was easy for me to go back and watch old stuff. But like I said, I've never been that into independent wrestling. So just watching these guys on YouTube, and it's just like, you get sucked in so easily. And this is with no context. I'm literally reading matches like that they'll send us and be like, here, watch this one. I'm proud of, like, I understand why you're proud of it. Like, and I think that at its core is what's beautiful about wrestling is you can, like, stories are great, the athleticism is great. You can go in blind and have a great time and just have some fun with it, and that's what it's all about,
Like, so for the longest time, my gimmick was Master of the Wrist Lock, just because I wanted to show that I could make that my finisher. And, Joey Ryan, his gimmick is the U-porn plex, where he gets your hand, puts it on his man genitalia, and flips you. So, with my finishing move being the wrist lock, we told the story of me beating his wrist, not only to weaken it, to make him submit, but so that he couldn't actually apply his move to me. So I was his kryptonite in that match, if you will. Little did I know later he would superplex me onto a batch of gummy bears, which would end me.
Those damn Haribo people.
Listen, I don't know. They must have been rock hard or something, because I definitely stayed down for the 3 count.
They were put in the freezer like hockey pucks.
Oh, that's what it was.
I knew it.
Oh.
So, building off fun stories, tell us about how you competed for the WWF Light Heavyweight title, one half of the ECW Tag Team titles, and the Infinity Gauntlet in the same match.
Okay. So, it was a triple threat match between myself, a lady out of California named Heather Monroe, and an Arizona woman named Bryn Thorne. So, doing this triple threat. And as I'm coming out, this fan shows me his WWF Light Heavyweight Championship. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to wear this belt. And I just did it to pop Bryn and Heather. So Heather comes out and does her entrance, sees that I have the belt, and is like, well, I want one. And another fan goes, here, and like hands her the ECW title. So then Bryn comes out, and we're both wearing titles. And you could see the look on Bryn's face, like, well, fuck, I want one. But no belts were left. A fan had an Infinity Gauntlet. So she took that. And then we, like, just called an audible and told the announcer, hey, we're fighting for these. And there's a wonderful picture somewhere of me crying like it's like WrestleMania 20, and I'm holding all three up. Fun fact, I have not been defeated for either three of them. So I am still your reigning Zealot Pro Wrestling WWF Light Heavyweight Champion, ECW Tag Champion? Yeah, Tag Champion. And the Infinity Gauntlet.
Chris, do you even know what the Infinity Gauntlet is?
No, I don't have a fucking clue, but I know it's a great story.
Oh my god.
It's literally what Thanos used to kill half of the Marvel universe.
He's got nothing. He doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know any of those words you just said.
What the hell?
I was a jock. I didn't read comic books. I'm sorry.
I'm a jock.
This isn't
You are
even,
a jock. I just fit the stereotype better.
Chris, this isn't even comic. This isn't even comic books. This is literally the highest grossing movie that was ever produced.
Check this out. While I have Mr. Jock here on the phone, check this out. Not only am I a comic book nerd, but I own stock in Green Bay.
Ooh.
Right?
Fun fact that you don't know yet, and Greg can attest to this, my dad's cousin is in the Packers Hall of Fame.
Fun fact, your dad's cousin is my best friend, and I don't even know him.
He was Brett Favre's center for the Super Bowl. Yeah.
That's badass.
I've never met him, but he's my dad's cousin.
All right.
That story's for offline. Greg knows why.
Yeah.
That's one that we can't talk about. That's the whole I'm an Italian from New York thing. So we're gonna let it go.
Fair enough.
But yeah. So I'm sorry for not knowing the Marvel universe. Maybe sometime during this fun period that we're in, I will watch some of those movies. But yeah, I have no idea what the Infinity Gauntlet was.
Well,
I thought it was.
I've been mostly geeking out to Mortal Kombat 11 because I've been playing my PlayStation 4 lately, and I started replaying it because they're making an add-on to Mortal Kombat 11. So like, the story continues. So that's my geeky side too.
Is that the one where they're putting RoboCop in it? I heard that today. Nice.
Yeah, he's in that. Which will be interesting because Terminator is a playable character in this one. So you can do Terminator versus RoboCop with fatalities.
Okay, sold. Sold.
I'm still mad. I'm still very mad that they haven't done Michael Myers yet.
I think that's the only person that would move slower than RoboCop.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very.
It's kind of like, because I'm sitting here like, well, Jason was actually really fast in MKX, but I'm like, well, Jason can get away with it, and it's like, yeah. Because Leatherface ran too.
Amazing what they come up with, what they add to video games.
I love wrestling, but I'm also a comic book, video game, and horror movie nerd. Like, the first movie my mother ever showed me as a child, she's very proud to tell this story, was Halloween. And I'm just sitting there laughing. Like, I thought it was great.
I mean,
maybe I'm a I don't know.
I mean, I grew up watching those with my mom too. To be honest, you know, I'm a horror geek for sure.
Oh yeah,
I love horror movies, and that's the one thing my wife and I can't agree on because she cannot watch them. She will never sleep.
Really?
Oh, to the point where like I can't even watch them in bed because if she wakes up to them, she won't go back to bed. which drives me nuts because that's the best time to watch them is right before bed. You get a little scare in, and then you go to sleep. But
Yeah.
um, the video games, and this is definitely not a pre-planned discussion, but it's something that I picked up on just kind of scrolling through wrestling Twitter. It seems like the video game aspect is alive and well in the wrestling community, almost to the point where it's more fun for people to play video games than it is to like have the old school 80s and 90s parties.
Sure. Like, but you got to think of it this way too. A lot of us are, well, pandemic aside, um, a lot of us are usually on the road like 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. So, like, you have the Nintendo Switch, which is brilliant because you can play that at home, and when you get on the road, you can travel with it, and you're able to play the games, and it helps kill time. Because, man, like, look, I've been on the road with some dear, dear friends, but there comes a point where you're just like, all right, we just need to chill for a little bit, and let's just, like, do our own thing so we don't go insane. And that's just the way it is. So
makes sense.
Video games are definitely a nice. It's also a fun escape too, because a lot of us, wrestling isn't our only job. Like for example, back in 2018, I would usually, let's say I come home Monday morning and I have to go straight to work. But because I was paying for my ex-girlfriend's bills and mine, because she was going back to school in her defense. So I would get up, go do that job, immediately jump ship and go to the second job, come home, go to bed. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Thursday morning, get up in the morning, go to my morning job, get in the car, drive to wherever I was wrestling to. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, you're coming back and wash, rinse, repeat. And so it's nice to, especially, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me anyway, it was always nice to have that cool down. Like just, look, I'm home, I'm tired, but I don't feel like going to bed just yet. And so video games are that nice escape for a lot of us.
It was like for me recently with the whole pandemic thing, because I was, I was working. I'm a restaurant manager in my real job. So I was working for a little while, and then my parents tested positive for COVID-19. They're fine. Everyone's fine. But because of our close contact, I had to be out of work for 2 weeks, and I was put on, and I was in quarantine, and then after that, I got furloughed. So my wife and my son, because my wife's pregnant, so she and my son went to, thank you. She and my son went to her mom's. So here I am, like, I'm stuck at home for 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm not working. Like, I'm just like, so I was like, let me see, what games haven't I played? And I kind of flew through Spider-Man because I wanted to play that forever, and that's just freaking amazing. And then they just released, and then a couple weeks ago they put out, PlayStation, they gave you free games. So they gave you like the Uncharted series for free. And I'm just like, well, okay, cool. Let me go do that. And you're right. It's just like when I was like alone, it's just like, I'm working on the podcast now too. So that's giving me something to do, but you're right. It's just, and some of those games are like time vampires. Like you just you're just like, oh my god, I've been playing for like 2 hours. Like, what did I do? Like, my coffee I made is cold and I haven't been drinking it, and you're just like, oh.
Okay. So growing up, I was always a fighting video game fan. Like that's what me and my brother played. We grew up playing Street Fighter. We grew up playing Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, you name it. This and that. Well, my ex-girlfriend, her and her brother were more of the RPG MMO peoples. And for those that don't know, that is open world essentially. And so she got me into this magical game that little did I know would suck my life away, called Skyrim. And I'm talking, she told me, she goes, hey, I'm telling you, like, I was going to play, it was like 11 o'clock, It's going to play for 2 hours. Next thing I know, it's 5 a.m. And I'm like, not me. That's stupid. Like, open world games are dumb. Here I am, freaking trying to unlock like all these hidden armors, and I'm just like, I'm so tired, but I'm so close. And yeah, like same thing. Like I would brew coffee to stay awake.
Yeah.
And then I'd forget the coffee was brewed. So by the time I went and got it, it was, it was in that weird, like, it's toasted because it's been on the heater thing. And I still drink that shit.
Yeah.
I'm a man that invented the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. The microwave your coffee to heat it up is not. I'm not proud of that, but it happens. I'm not ashamed to tell you that.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I only drink it cold, so it works out for me.
Psychopath.
See, I can't do cold coffee, but I can do cold pizza, cold chicken, like fried chicken. And recently I've gotten into cold barbecued sausage.
Cold
Could
pizza's
not
my
tell you why.
cold pizza's my jam. Love
I
cold
like
pizza.
room temperature pizza. Like, just like it's
like
not room temperature pizza. Like, it's
Okay.
not quite cold yet. Like, I don't like it straight out of the fridge, but it doesn't have to be hot. But it does have to be
You're
real
talking
pizza,
like-
so it has to be thin crust.
You're at a WrestleMania party. You're into hour 15 of said WrestleMania because YOLO. And like the way the pizza is at that moment, you're like, I can live with this.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. As the certified food safety expert in the room, that's a terrible idea.
Well, fun fact, actually, my 2 jobs that I have, I've been in service industry for 12 years.
Nice.
So one job was bartending, one job was managing. So I understand
Yeah.
the struggle. Like, because most wrestlers actually do service industry jobs because it's the easiest job to have that you can request off.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because I have 2 bachelors and a master's, but I'm working at a bartender and management job. A, because the money's good, but B, I can request off literally whenever I want. Like, when I found out back in 2016 I was going to Japan, it was literally like, hey, you're going in 2 weeks. And so I went to work and was like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a while. And they're like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Whereas a 9 to 5 job, you couldn't do that.
Yeah. It has its advantages and disadvantages for sure.
Oh, people
The flexible hours, yeah. So that's why, like last year, I was, my wife and I, we went to New Orleans for my birthday. We went Tuesday to Thursday. It's
Yeah.
like, I screw weekends. It's like, weekends are for the
Yeah.
birds. Like, I'll go midweek when there's nobody around, and it's just like, you can basically do whatever you want.
Or just like the unwritten rule, you can always tell someone's service industry if they don't send their food back and they sit at the bar immediately.
Yeah.
Because we know we're going to get the best service at the bar.
Yeah. That's why, like, the last 2 years we've gone to Disney World in, like, September and October, respectively. It's the best time to go. We love Disney, and it's like, there's nobody there. It's a
I'll have to
breeze.
keep that in mind because, fun confession time, I've actually never been to Disney World.
Wow. It's a scene.
Now, this is another fun fact. I had never seen. I mean, I've rectified this obviously, but I had never seen. Harry Potter.
Oh, wow.
But because a friend of mine worked at Universal Studios in Orlando, she would always get me in at a really, really good discounted price. So I'd gone to Wizarding World of Harry Potter like 7 times. And so finally I sit down and I'm watching it. And I'm like, this looks so familiar. Oh my God, I've been there. And my friends are like, what? And I go, yeah, I've been there. Like, I went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And they all looked at me like, yeah, fuck you.
I just did the, like, from February to, like, the end of March, I read all the books and I watched all the movies after I read the books. And, like, those movies are good. Like, they hold up.
The movies compared to the books, that's probably the one that gets it closest.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, during this pandemic time, I've actually, like, been reading a lot more. And like I knocked out the Harry Potter series again, and then I watched the movies.
Yeah.
And
What's
then
what's your favorite one?
what's up?
What's your favorite one? Gotta
Oh
ask. It's such a tough question.
God, I really, I'm torn. I want to say Prisoner of Azkaban.
Okay.
I want to say Prisoner of Azkaban.
That's the only one I saw in theaters. I remember that.
That's actually the only one I saw in theaters too. But the thing is what I liked about it the most is just all the constant twists.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, you think that Sirius is this evil villain, and then come to find out he's this spoiler.
Yeah.
He's this really good guy that ends up like becoming Harry's godfather.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he was already his godfather.
Yeah.
But just like, and then the freaking werewolf gimmick, like that was freaking amazing.
Yeah. That's a good one. I always go to like just for a combination of book movie is for Goblet of Fire. I love those ones.
Goblet of Fire is really good, but whenever, you know, all the stuff that happens with, like, I got attached to Cedric.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't, like, that killed me.
Maybe that's why. Chris,
And then here's the deal, too. Like, the thing is in the movie and the book, when Cedric dies, it's just, boom, and he's dead.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh,
yeah.
this is not for kids.
No.
This is mature. But that's the cool thing that I will give Harry Potter. And I'm not the biggest Potter nerd, so don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I love it, even though that's what we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes. The thing that always is cool to me is the level of rhetoric in the books matures as he gets older.
Yeah.
Like, it's pure kids book in the first one.
Yep.
And then it just gets more and more where, like, you know, the Deathly Hallows, like that was an intense book.
Yeah, and you had to trudge through like the first half of it. 'Cause first half is slow and boring, and you're just like,
yeah. But I swear to you, I read. Granted, thank you, pandemic. I read Deathly Hallows, the whole thing, and because we had gotten the big thick one, so it was the whole thing in one book.
yeah,
I read that in 2 days.
yeah.
Like, I don't read often, but I am a quick reader.
Oh man, Chris, have we totally lost you?
Yeah. I've never seen Harry Potter. I've never read a Harry Potter book. You know, I feel a little left out in this conversation. I get made fun of consistently anytime, and Greg knows this, anytime all of our friends get together, whether it's Robin's friends or my friends. I've never seen Disney movies either. I just never, it was never my thing. When all the newer ones came out, we were teenagers. Sure. I was way too cool for school on that one, and I just never got into it. And yeah, it's right over my head. It's kind of sad, but it's true.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, we support this.
So we've talked a half hour, and like a minute and a half has been about wrestling. So to bring Chris back to the fold. Why don't we? Yeah. We can shift gears now.
Yeah.
To get you back in.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Who loves you?
Both of you guys. So, talk to us about the significance of Mercury rising in your career, because I know you have 2 stories with it.
So Mercury Rising was really cool because, like I told y'all, like I had never ever been to an indie show. I had never been to, you know, I didn't even really know much about indie wrestling when I first got in the business. And so one of the guys when I started traveling as a wrestler, he's out of Oklahoma. His worker name was Seven, but his name is Miguel. And he took a liking to me. And, you know, gimmick, we kind of knew that Shawn Michaels was going to retire at WrestleMania 26. So we all kind of made this awesome little road trip where he came up to me and he goes, "Hey, man, do you trust me?" It's like, "Of course." He's like, "Cool. Give me like $200 and don't ask questions. I'm like, okay, because reasons. Well, he ends up getting us 2 nights of Ring of Honor. He got us a Dragon Gate Mercury Rising ticket. I believe we went to CZW. I can't remember. But anyway, so we went to Dragon Gate Mercury Rising. And I'm watching it. And the opening contest was a tag match with Paul London and Brian Kendrick against 2 people. I could not for the life of me tell you who it was. Well, fast forward 4 years later, and I would debut at Dragon Gate USA Mercury Rising. And lo and behold, at a company in Austin called Anarchy Championship Wrestling, I was tag champions with Paul London. So it was just this cool little full circle, like, wow, this happened in 4 years type situation.
That's definitely one of my favorite stories that you've told, and we talked about that off air. And I will say this: if anybody in our audience wants to have fun wrestling conversation, interactions with Jack are the best, because you'll just wind up talking stories for 4 hours on a random Saturday night while sitting outside smoking a cigar while your wife sleeps. And then she's like, where have you been? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it. So you've wrestled on 4 different continents. Tell us what stays consistent and what changes in how you present Jack Jameson to the crowd.
So Jack Jameson is always kind of dependent upon the crowd. Like, for example, when I wrestled at Progress back in 2013, I wrestled my Storm Academy roommate. And so it was babyface versus babyface. And there was just one guy. And normally I won't talk crap to the crowd unless I'm a heel. But we're getting ready to wrestle. And he had to have been drunk, because this was like this 3rd or 4th match. And they were in there at the venue drinking before the show. And but the match is starting, and he goes, "Let's go, Steve!" And I look at him and I'm like, "All right." So we're getting ready to lock up again, and you just hear him go, "Let's go, Steve!" But keep in mind, it's quiet, like the crowd's watching, like they're waiting to see what's going to happen. And finally, I look at him and I go, "Hey, man, I flew here from Texas. Like, can't I get a cheer from you?" And he goes, "Fuck you. Let's go, Steve." And I stop and I look at him and I go, "You know what?" And I point to the crowd and I go, "I love each and every one of you. But you, I hope you get fucking syphilis." And the crowd just starts going, "Syphilis, syphilis, syphilis." So, I hate to say it, but with the exception of obviously my wrestling move list, there's really not a major difference between Jack Jameson anywhere he goes. Babyface, heel, what have you. It really depends on the crowd what I'm going to do.
And I've seen that in watching your matches, that you consistently interact with the crowd. I don't know if Greg saw this or not, but can you tell the story about the time where you got beat up sitting on a random fan's lap?
Sure. I was doing a triple threat match in Las Vegas against Swade Thompson and Shotzi Blackheart. And we're rolling out. And, I needed to catch my breath. And there were no chairs. So I turned the fan into a chair. And God bless Swade Thompson. He decides to lift my shirt up, put it over my face, and chop me on this fan. That is a thing.
Oh.
I know. I was trying to catch my breath, the asshole.
Do you find that in your travels and whatever you're watching, on television today, is that like a lot? Is that something that gets lost sometimes? Is like the performers feeding off the crowd and kind of going
Well,
with the flow, or just like I got to get my shit in?
it is because a lot like there's nothing wrong with having the formula down, if you will. But at the end of the day, you sometimes have to call an audible because obviously different areas dictate different styles of wrestling. Like in North Texas and West Texas, that's your WCCW. That's your old school Von Erichs fans. That's your old school like Bruiser Brody fans. That's the people that just they don't want high flying and things like that. They just want two big beefy dudes to go out there and beat the crap out of each other. So if I'm out there doing like some high fly stuff, which if you've watched any of my matches, you're probably going to get 87% of because I do nothing but 450s. That's total sarcasm for anybody listening. But anyway, if you have something, you have to be able to, because at the end of the day, like, don't get me wrong, like, it's cool to get your stuff in, but ultimately what you have to remember is it's about the fans. They're the ones that paid their money to see that match. They're the ones that paid to see something that's entertaining. And they, whether or not we like it, they have the right to boo or sit on their hands if they're not enjoying the match. So as a wrestler, it's your job to pull an audible and go out there and freaking make it a match that they like. So I really do like involving the crowd because ultimately you get these keyboard warriors and you get these people that are doing this and that. And sure, it can be annoying, but ultimately all it is them wanting to be a part of the show. Because, listen, Jack Jameson circa 1991, I was 6 years old. I was no different than any other keyboard warrior. I was a fan that loved wrestling and wanted to be a wrestler. Just, I was blessed with a route that led me to become a wrestler. Some of them didn't. Some of them have lives. Some of them have wives. Some of them have things that they need to do. And you know what? For every person that wanted to be a wrestler and stays at home because they have a wife and kids and stuff, like, I give them mad props. So, it can be annoying, don't get me wrong. Excuse me. But ultimately, back to the question you were asking, you have to be able to listen to the fans and hear what they're wanting in your match.
And I think it's something that Greg and I struggle with, and to the point where I think we both were just trying to incite the audience for AEW and NXT tonight, because it feels like there's a difference between booing when you're not happy and sitting on your hands, or cheering when you enjoy something, and hijacking a show. And if you're making yourself the center of attention and taking away from the other fans' experience, that's when it really bothers me.
The ever popular beach volleyball in the crowd, that's kind of disrespectful. Like, there's a difference between like the Daniel Bryan, where they would chant for him because nowadays you kind of know what's going on backstage, so they knew that Daniel Bryan wasn't, someone that the McMahons wanted to push right away. So they're the reason that he was able to get to that main event at WrestleMania 30. So that's something that, like, works. But then, like, for me, the CM Punk chants, that was just, it got a bit too much at times. Because CM Punk had already said, I don't want to come back. I'm happy with what I'm doing, but the crowd's still, like, chanting and chanting and chanting.
Yeah, and it goes back to like a show I was at a couple years ago, where and we talked about this on another interview last night. It was, it was Cena versus Roman Reigns in like a main event of a house show, and it's like there's just one dude that's just like not even just chanting, he's screaming, "Cena sucks!" like 3 rows behind us. And it's like, dude, let it go. Like there comes a point, like I get it, but like you need like just take a deep breath, man, because like it's like just like why like did you pay like yeah I get it you like the pay your money reasoning behind it, like I get that I paid my money, I can do what I want, yeah, but why did you pay your money? Did you pay your money to watch a wrestling match, or did you pay your money that you could scream at another human being for no reason for 15 minutes? Like I don't
Exactly.
I don't get that. Like that doesn't register with me at all.
No, I'm right there with you. Like, and you know what? A majority of the people that complain about Cena sucks and all this and all that, like, let's call a spade a spade. Does he actually suck, or are you just saying that to say it? Because
Yeah, is it the cool thing to do?
right, like,
Yeah.
But here again, going back to what we were talking about before, if you go back to John Cena back when he was Word Life gimmick, like white rapper,
Yeah.
he was one of the top baby faces in the company. And then going back to it, once Vince McMahon was like, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna make you my boy." Now suddenly it's not cool to root for John Cena. And it's like, okay,
Like,
But the minute he comes back as the Doctor of Thugonomics, the place goes crazy.
yeah.
oh dude, Bray Wyatt versus John Cena at WrestleMania 36. What's crazy is that match and the Undertaker versus AJ Styles. I loved them because I'm very character driven. I loved them. Those matches could not have happened or would not have happened in that way if it weren't for the pandemic.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, that was them, And hell, let's call a spade here with John Cena. That man did not have to do a drop kick 12 years into his career. That man did not have to do frickin' Yoshi Tonics. That man didn't have to do Code Reds. But guess what? He was out there doing them because either A, he was like, I just want to see if I can do it, or B, he was trying to add to his arsenal. Like, John Cena is actually a fantastic person psychologically, wrestling-wise, all that stuff. It's just cool. He's not the smoothest in the world. Neither am I.
It's like, so, going back to those two matches, like as a horror fan, that was a horror movie, that Firefly Funhouse. That was what it was. It was a mental. It just messed with you mentally. That was it. Let me enhance your failures.
It was very much. I wouldn't say a horror movie. I would say it's a thriller.
Yeah.
Because it got you thinking. Because and even he does the gimmick in the NWO.
Yeah.
And that was awesome because that was poking fun at the fact that freaking John Cena never wanted to be never wanted to be heel.
Yeah.
But guess what? The most defining moment in Hogan's career was when he turned heel and joined the NWO.
And it's funny you bring that up because I was having a debate with one of our friends on Twitter who used to have a podcast, and we're close with them. And they were talking about the greatest gimmick changes. And I fully argue that Hogan, while yes, it was a heel turn, that was the ultimate gimmick change, period. Like, going from Hulk Hogan, who at that point, and people seem to forget, is he was starting to lose the crowd. And all of a sudden he comes back, changes everything, including his theme music, and he is the biggest heel, borderline of all time. I want to ask this question. As we're talking about fans. When you were in Japan, with the language barrier, how did you make those fans feel your emotions?
For this, I mean, the same way that we as Americans watch New Japan and we'll watch Okada versus Naito. We don't know what they're saying, but you can still appreciate the match. You can still appreciate the art form. And that was the cool thing, too, was, I had watched enough wrestling, and then I was fortunate that while I was at Wrestle One, Kaz Hayashi was our trainer at the dojo. So he kind of gave us the iggy on how the crowd was. But really, all they want is just, like, for them, it's chess. And if I go in there and just boom, boom, boom and beat you, sometimes that's cool. But that's not what they wanted. They want to see a good back and forth. They want to see technical moves. And that's what we did. We did a lot of technical wrestling. And the crowd was clapping for it. It was really cool.
So, another key thing with you, talk about how you used the multiple universe theory when you turned heel.
So the gimmick behind Jack Jameson turning heel was there's a company in Arizona called Party Hard Wrestling, and they invoke the multiverse gimmick, which is a really unique concept. It's, look, we understand there are other wrestling companies, but here's the Jack Jameson that we have. Well, the gimmick that we implemented was an evil Jack Jameson, because Jack Jameson at Party Hard was the ultimate babyface. Like, everybody loved him, kissed babies, did all that stuff. I didn't, because that's weird and I don't know the parents of these babies, but you get what I'm saying. But the gimmick was that evil Jack from another multiverse came to this one and killed Jack Jameson dead. Made him dead. Replaced him, and that's why Jack turned evil.
That makes sense.
That, Jack? I don't know. We'll never know.
Didn't something really unique happen to bring the old Jack back, though?
Yes. So, both in real life and as a wrestler, one of my dearest, closest friends is Leva Bates. We were a tag team called the Mega Man Powers, which is a lovely play off my favorite video game, Mega Man, and Hogan and Macho Man. But the gimmick behind it was that Leva was the only one that could tell that this wasn't the same Jack from this multiverse. So she challenged him to a match, and they wrestled. And, you got your young bucks who do the super kick party, which is cool and all. But in order to bring Jack Jameson back, beat him so badly that the soul of good Jack took over the body of evil Jack, she may or may not have given me 27 pedigrees.
Oh, the pedigree party. I love it.
That was a thing.
That is one of the best stories. And again, something that you can only get in independent wrestling. There's no shot that someone on TV today would take the time to do that.
Well,
and
one of my favorite matches that I've had was actually against a guy who really only wrestles in Arizona. His name was Josh Carey. Pretty sure it still is, but you get what I'm saying. Anyways, so New Orleans has a very unique thing. They have a boxing commission that will run the companies. And for example, you're not allowed to do the pedigree. That is an illegal move. Your company will be shut down if someone hits a pedigree. Because it's a pile driver. So what we did, because WrestleMania was in New Orleans that year, this was Mania 34, I brought out the list of banned New Orleans moves. And I said, well, look, y'all chose to be here with us instead of going to New Orleans and seeing Mania. So I'm going to do something better for y'all. We're going to do a checklist of every move that is banned in Louisiana. And so we did all the spots. I forget. I researched it and had a checklist. Well, the final one was the pile driver. And I go to pick him up for a pile driver. And, he ends up reversing it into a jackknife pin and beats me. So, that was me just trying to get all the moves off the checklist, and he took advantage of that. But it was still that could only happen on indie wrestling.
It's brilliant. Just brilliant. Just so creative. I love that stuff.
You gotta have fun.
Yeah.
Because you gotta remember too, the way that I view my own psychology and things like that is I have to remember that I'm a fan too. And if it's something that I'd want to see, I would like to hope the fans would want to see too. And so far I've been pretty on point. I mean, Arizona is the only place that I've ever been to where literally anytime I screamed wrist lock and got someone in it, the crowd went crazy for it. It was really cool. Actually, that's not true. Australia, when I wrestled at Melbourne City Wrestling, I screamed wrist lock and got him in the wrist lock, and I got a wrist lock party chant.
That's super cool.
That's actually a really fun match. If you ever go to Melbourne City Wrestling, I'm sure they have like an online thing, like a library or something. But if you ever go back and watch my match against Mr. Juicy, Gino Gambino, for the Intercommonwealth Championship, we do a match because there were 2 cameramen outside. And the best part is they didn't know this was coming. So we roll out and we tag the cameramen in. And we take their cameras and they get in there and wrestle for a couple of minutes. It was great. They had but God bless them, they didn't know it was coming and they went with it.
That's fantastic. That really is.
You got to think outside the box.
It's something that people take for granted. You guys are the ultimate entertainers. You put your bodies on the line for our enjoyment, and as fans, I think, as a whole, people need to be more willing to, be thankful as opposed to just thinking they deserve something. So I want to kind of segue all the way back to your training. And so now you worked at the Storm Academy run by Greg's favorite pro wrestler, Lance Storm, who is, Greg has his story and we'll let him tell it. How much did you take out of that school?
Oh my God. I remember I had already been in the business for 3 years. And I wasn't happy with where I was at and, wanted to better myself. And so, of course, you're the way Lance does his school is he doesn't care if you've been in there 15 years. He doesn't care if you've been there 15 days. He doesn't care if you've been in there for 15 minutes. Everybody goes through the same, curriculum every time. But, man, it's so crazy to go back to the basics and work on those and realize, how important they really are and how quickly you'll forget it and take them for granted. So what I took from that is very much, being able to not only respect the moves, but respect the psychology behind it. Because that's the thing. Lance Storm might not have been, the most energetic wrestler, if you will. He kind of had a if I could be serious for a minute type moment.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that he can't train you to do it. And he's the prime example of just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And so that's really what I took away from it, was taking the appreciation, not just for the things that I want to do, but the things that I'd forgotten and took for granted. Because that's the thing. Go back and watch some of the old school matches. Those dudes will milk a lockup. They will milk a lockup. But you're so invested in it that you're okay.
That happened on a show we covered a couple weeks ago on the podcast when we did Starrcade 85. There's an arm wrestling
Love
match.
That one.
Yeah, thank you. And there's an arm wrestling match, and it's who can get hyped for an arm wrestling match? But the way Superstar Billy Graham sold the whole thing, I was oh my God, this is awesome. I was in, man. And yes,
absolutely.
I'm just trying to avoid telling my Lance Storm story. It's so embarrassing.
It happens. Sometimes you big league.
Okay, so should we tell it just to get it out of the way? My version, because I believe Chris has told Jack this version, his version of the story off air.
Sure.
Am I right? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So we are at Madison Square Garden, Survivor Series 2002. Great show, best live show I've ever been to, and that includes 3 WrestleManias. Hands down, best live show ever.
I remember seeing it live on pay-per-view.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
And we'll maybe cover that again some other day. But so we're leaving, and we're walking to the parking lot, and we happen to just stumble upon the wrestler exit.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys are coming out, and I think we saw Devon Dudley was coming out a little bit. Didn't see him; he was pretty far away. And Hurricane Helms walks by us. Gregory Helms, Shane Helms, whatever. So he walks by us. And me being 21 and probably had a couple of pops in me that night, I think I yelled at him, "Hey, Sugar Shane, give me the sugar smack." I'm not proud of that. It happened. But as I'm doing that, and he didn't hear me, but as I'm doing that, like I turn, and walking towards me is Lance Storm. And we were big ECW guys, so I always loved Lance Storm. And he's shaking hands on the way, and I see him, and he's right near me, and I froze. And he's got his hand out, but he's walking because he's not going to stop for my ass. He just keeps walking, and like I don't shake his hand, and he just the slow turn back to look at me. It's like, okay, like this is weirdo, and then he just keeps going. And this is going to be 18 years ago in November, and Chris and his brother have never let me live that down. I did get my redemption moment, though, a couple years later. I tweeted him on his birthday with the story. He responded back to me. He thought it was hilarious. And so at least it came full circle enough. But that was my big league and Lance Storm moment. Not one of my finest hours, but...
Hey, sometimes you got a big league.
Completely unintentional.
Maybe he needed that humbling.
The best part was that he didn't even realize he did it. My brother and I are looking at... Now, my brother and I are, on the other side of him. So it's not even like we could have stepped in to help him. We were too far away.
Yeah.
And we're like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? What did I do? And I
do. He's like, he went to shake your hand. I'm like, oh, no.
And then the best is, and this is the part that gets left out every time, he goes, should I run up and catch him and shake his hand? We're like, no, let it go.
This is embarrassing.
Let it be.
Our other good accidentally finding the talent exit was at WrestleMania 29 at the Meadowlands.
That was this guy.
That was you. That was Chris. And we took a wrong turn leaving, so we got lost going to our car. So as we're walking, and we see barricades, but we're like, just cut through. Who cares? No, but there's no security. There's nobody. There was just New
York, New Jersey. Barricades don't mean shit.
Yeah, but there was nobody there, but there's just all the Lincoln Town cars and SUVs, the black limos outside. So we figured we're somewhere. And as we're walking, out walks Dolph Ziggler and Big E. And people just kind of swarm, and then they finally separated out. And the best part was out comes Randy Orton. Randy Orton looks out, sees that there's no security or no anybody, has this shocked look on his face, puts his hood up, walks right back inside. And it was just the funniest thing to see him just completely freeze, just be like, oh crap, I'm not leaving now, and hightail it back inside. It was hysterical.
Yeah, it was a great accidental experience. You take for granted these guys are larger than life until they're not.
Yeah, they're all human. Man. Yeah,
Big E is a monster, but he's short. He's my height.
I learned when I was tagging with Paul London is because when they first he was running late to the show, so I really first met him maybe right before the match. And so he's still like Paul London from WWE circa 2002 to me. But as you get to know him, he's just a normal guy. Like you, me, Greg, like all of us. And that was what I took from that experience, was really just remembering at the end of the day, they're no different than you or I. And it's kind of funny you say that story, because I have this story where I remember going to get Shawn Michaels' autograph at the Frank Irwin Center. It was buy your tickets and get Shawn Michaels' autograph. And I went with my grandfather. And my grandpa turns to Shawn Michaels and says, hey, will you put to a future pro wrestler? And this was back, I was 12. And Shawn Michaels just kind of looked at him and wrote, Shawn Michaels. And that was it, handed it to him. Well, then 2 years later, we would go to the WCW Grill in Las Vegas, if anybody remembers that.
Oh, yeah. The Nitro Grill.
Well, Daphne was there. And she not only gave me her autograph, but she sat there and talked to me and let me pick her brain. before I knew what picking brains was. Well, I always remembered that, and so that same night that I debuted for Mercury Rising, I stayed at the Mania Hotel with all the other workers. I came down and Daphne was there, like at breakfast, and we're chatting. We're all in this little group, and I kind of pulled her to the side and told her, like, "Hey, I've been wrestling for what? It was 2014, so at that point, 5 years." So I told her, I was like, "Hey, I never forgot that." And so it's crazy how just taking that little bit of time to actually like talk to the fans. Like, I've met Shawn Michaels and shook his hand, but Daphne's the one that I was like, "Oh, that was cool."
I think. Go ahead, Greg.
No, that's why we like doing like this new format, because like we just get to, talk to guys like yourself and the other people we've interviewed, that like it's just they're just so just happy to we're nobodies yet. We're just kind of two fans, and that's why I said yet, and we're just two fans who just have a passion for this sport and love talking about it, and just the gratefulness that the wrestlers have had to come on with us, and like the fun they've had, and it's just like, it's nice that you've kind of gotten drawn to us for some reason or another, but like it's just so cool to like hear their stories and just talk to them like you're just sitting down having a beer or something. It's just it's better than anything.
Oh yeah, and that's the cool thing too, is like, honestly, when I was coming up in the business, where I would learn the most from the workers was when we were in the car driving from point A to point B, because it'd be like, "Hey, we got a Texas carload coming from here to Louisiana or here to Arizona. Can you pick up so and so and so and so?" And every so often, you have a big name in there, and you use that time to really pick their brain and get to know them and learn their mentality. And man, for the most part, obviously, like you meet a wrestler at the airport at like 2 a.m, they're not really in the mood to talk. But it'd be like anybody. It'd be like if I woke up at 2 a.m.
I think we lost Jack.
Okay, and we're back.
When you look back at your career, 20 years from now, what is the legacy Jack Jameson?
I would just like, the legacy to be one of, whether it be one of redemption, because Jack Jameson's made a few mistakes, but also, that I was someone that was able to just help other people out. Like, that's what I want to be remembered for, is just I was that guy that was always willing to help someone else out. And the thing about this business that's crazy is it's one of those businesses where it's not just how good you are. It's there's politics, there's things of that nature. It's stuff that we all know. Like, it's obvious. But man, sometimes there are talents out there that you just gotta help out and give that little push to, and give them that confidence that they need. Kind of like Miguel did for me. Like when Miguel, like this man did not have to pick me up and take me to Colorado or take me to Arkansas to do shows there. But man, those were the experiences that really got me the foot in the water, like getting experience, learning the road, and so that's the legacy that I'd like Jack Jameson to have. When this is all said and done, is that he was just a helpful guy that was always there for people.
And I have no doubt, just knowing how you've helped us, and to kind of bring down the curtain on this came about, and our friendship really came about because you tweeted about our show just completely out of nowhere. Neither of us saw it coming, and we immediately started talking. and you've been nothing but helpful in helping us, one, secure people that may not have responded to us, two, kind of giving insight in questioning, because as people outside of the business, there's stuff we take for granted that seems so innocent. And just like you said, politics, you don't realize how much it plays into it. So you've been influential very quickly in our experience. So thank you for that.
Yes,
I appreciate that. And that's the big thing too, is like, shocker, shocker. I'll actually be starting my own wrestling company, pandemic pending and tentatively, this November. And the thing that I've learned, because like y'all saw in the tapes that I sent, I had my own Jack's birthday barbecue spot show, because it was really just, hey, I want to see, like, what was interesting about 2019 was, this is when I was, and we're going to get a little deep here, but this was back when me and my girlfriend were my ex-girlfriend and I were on the rocks. And I felt like, maybe if I retire from wrestling and just focus my all on this relationship, maybe we can get back on the right path. And, I learned a lot about myself there, in the sense that, and I'll be completely honest with y'all, like, when we first started dating, her and I had the conversation where I'm like, hey, I want to get married and have kids. And she didn't. But it was so, like, I think it was 2 months into the relationship that that had happened, that we were both just like, well, let's just see where this goes. Here we are 5 years later, and we're still together. But, what I took from that was, okay, if I'm going to retire, I'm going to do a wrestling show just to see if I can do it. And I've been blessed to get comments from other fans that have said, like, hey, in Arizona, and I'm from Texas, keep that in mind, but in Arizona, I apparently had one of the best shows of 2019. Because, man, we had, like, Bryn Thorne versus Joey Ryan. The main event was Jack Jameson versus Heather Monroe versus Kimberly. We had Kelly Klein versus Tisha Price, who's an up-and-comer out of, I don't even want to say she's an up-and-comer, because she was on the Mae Young Classic. We had Space Monkey versus a Vegas guy named Macho Mouse versus an Arizona guy named El Dragon, which was a really cool animal match. God, what else did we have that was really cool? I'm trying to think of all the unique ones. We had my Storm Academy roommate Steve Burden, wrestle a guy out of Texas named Tyler Jett. So you got England, a guy from Progress, wrestling a guy from Texas. So it ended up being a really cool show. And at a time that, my ex-girlfriend and I realized we needed to go our separate ways. And I saw the fans' responses. So, like, to a lot of the Arizona fans, like, they're the reason that I'm sitting here right now with y'all, talking with y'all. And they're the reason that I'm thinking about running this promotion. And they're the reason that I'm sitting here going, well, you know what? The reason, that my ex-girlfriend and I broke up was because, we came to a point where it's like, hey, we could be together, but it's like 10 years from now, if I still want to get married and have kids and she doesn't, I could resent her or get bitter. Cross-apply that to pro wrestling. There's still a couple of things that I want to do on my wrestling bucket list. So I don't want to turn on Raw in 2030 and be like, oh, I never got to do this, or I never did this. So those wrestling fans, they're the reason that I'm still here. And so just to kind of draw it back, kind of like you were saying, like you said that, you'd reach out to people and they might not have responded right away. Well, that's how it is as a promoter. Like, there are times that I have to, because no one likes to talk on the phone. I get that. Texting's way easier. But, man, there are a couple of times that as tentative promoter, I have to be like, hey, let me give you a call, just because it's going to be easier for me to relay what I'm trying to say, get the answers out of you that I need, get the questions answered that you have. It's just easier because, that's just kind of how the business works. It's like any little thing can and will be misconstrued. So, man, it kind of come back to what you were saying, like, there is a lot of good in this business, and it's just sometimes you need that little bit of help.
Definitely.
And that's what we're trying to do here. And thank you for recognizing that we're trying to be some of the good and bring positive vibes and bring fun back to wrestling fandom, because that's really our mission. And that, and besides that, and taking over the world, like,
well, as you should.
Yeah. I mean, that's what kind of the foundation of this is. So we appreciate that sentiment for sure, and we respect that. That's freaking phenomenal.
And the thing that I, like I said, and, absolutely do not let this go to your head, you egotistical bastards. Yeah. But the reason that I like y'all's podcast so much is because every podcast that I've ever been on from day one to now is always, so what got you into wrestling? What made you do this? What made you do that? And it's very frustrating for a wrestler, because we're genuinely like, we've answered this a million times. So keep doing what y'all are doing, because the way that y'all question it, the way that y'all deliver the questions, it's refreshing almost. It doesn't feel like it's that, because that's the deal too. Like, go pick a wrestler, find them on a podcast, and listen to how freaking every podcaster will ask the same questions over and over and over and over again. And it's to the point where I've made it a mission to try and answer those questions as quickly as I can. Because it's like, all right, here we go. So keep doing what y'all are doing, because none of the questions that y'all ask are cookie cutter, which is very refreshing.
Because that's, it is, it's for, I usually, like, and I think it's the balance that we have, like, when it comes to interviewing people. Chris has, like, he asks the good questions, like, that, like, seem standard, but just with a little twist on it. And then I'm more of the philosophical person. Like, I like to know, like, like how they, like, the feelings behind stuff. And, I'm more the emotional one, and, like the reactions to fans and things like that. Like, that's, like, where my interests lie, because it's like, you could, like, a lot of that stuff you can just read about, and, like, people are, everything's out there now. It's nobody, like, nobody has, like, these deep dark secrets, like, when it comes to, like, where they came up through and everything like that. It's just, you talk to people like they're human beings, and not like just like you said, like the cookie cutter things. Like, that's no fun. That's not fun to me. I like asking people, like, one of my stock questions is like their guilty pleasure wrestling match. Like, what's one match you go back to? And
Bastion Booger versus Scott Hall all freaking day. I love Bastion Booger. Hell, at my wrestling show, we had the Bastion Booger Memorial Battle Royal. I freaking love him. He's the freaking best. He could have wrestled Godzilla. He should have been a Kaiju Big Battle wrestler. But see, that's the thing too, that a lot of people, like, you'll get your podcasters that do their research, and immediately they see, oh, Jack Jameson was trained by Lance Storm. But what a lot of people don't know is I was at the Storm Academy for 3 months. Yeah. The rest of my training beyond that was with a woman who actually won the first Shine Women's Championship. Her name was Radiant Rain. She now runs a company in Hawaii, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool.
But a lot of people don't know. Like, and I wrote this on Facebook the other day. I said, find you a trainer that will teach you the ins and outs of wrestling, but also teach you how to be a human. Like Rain will still text me and go, hey, sweetie, how are you doing? Like, is everything going well? How's your day? Like, she will literally, she is my wrestling mother. She will literally check on me to make sure everything's good. And, like, she gave me the best advice in the world. Ironically, the two people that gave me the best advice so far on running this company that I'm planning were Rain and my dear sweet Peepaw. And hers was, well, both of them, actually. Both of them said in their own way, like, don't get overwhelmed so quickly. because it's like, sure, this promotion's tentatively pandemic pending starting in November. But the thing about it is it's really easy. Like, I can tell you, like, as I've been messaging with Chris, like, I'm waking up at like 3 a.m. going, oh my God, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And I'm trying to get the ins and outs. It's real easy to get burnt out. So they're both just like, hey, you've got plenty of time. Don't think that you're rushed. Take your time. You're going to be okay.
Well, I know for me, I can't wait for that first show. And I heard you're going to have an incredible commentary team.
I mean, it's going to be a unique one for sure.
So let's, we're definitely going to have to come back and do a part 2. This.
I promise I'll have my phone charged.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I know you.
That's true.
But this has been awesome. Your story is so unique, but incredible and inspiring as well. Bringing the fun back into wrestling and, just straight up, we definitely appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I can't tell you how much it's definitely helped me through this pandemic. Our conversations, you've helped guide this podcast more than you realize, because one of the first things you said to me was don't ask the same questions everybody else does. And not that I necessarily was planning to, but it was, okay, you still have to get out some of that information. How do I do it without asking the exact same question as everybody else? And it's the best advice I've received in terms of the podcast. And I think it's definitely served us well in our short time doing these interviews. So thank you for that.
Of course. And then it comes down to the simple fact that if you think about it, you didn't ask the questions the way most other podcasters will, but as a wrestler, and you'll notice this with the other ones, you still got the answers. You still got those same answers because they're like, oh, let me plug this in really quick.
Yep. And
that's super important.
It's just fun. So with that, why don't you plug your social media, because you have the best Twitter handle ever.
So I have my Twitter and Instagram at Machismo Libre. You can find me on Facebook. It's www.facebook.com/Legend of Jameson. I'm a Legend of Zelda mark. And then I do have a Pro Wrestling Tees account, which is prowrestlingtees.com/Machismo Libre. Which is fun because I try to have shirts unique to that venue, but also different ones at the show. So definitely come visit me, boost my ego, let me get more followers. I take adorable pictures of my grandpa and my dog.
Well, again, thank you so much. You can follow me at Chris_DDTHSLB. You can follow Greg at DDT Archives. Make sure you're downloading, subscribing on iTunes, and just continue to take this journey with us because it's been fun and it's only going to keep getting better from here. So thank you everybody for your time. We appreciate it, and we'll be back with you soon.
All right.